Hello everyone and my fellow boxers. Today we have rubber, and before we get started I'd like to clarify a few points regarding strength. In boxing there are many different ways to develop physical strength. Each method has its own definition and its own purpose. For example, there's a type of strength that's developed through gymnastics. What's good about gymnastics? It's that the muscle gets stretched, its properties become like an elastic muscle, which is very beneficial both for the cartilage and for the quality of the muscle fiber itself when you stretch it. Another aspect included in the definition of strength through gymnastics is very fine motor skills, which are otherwise quite difficult to develop. Next, we have the fundamental base strength. It's also called strength as muscular endurance, meaning it's achieved through heavy weights. That is, barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, all of these are necessary somehow for building the base. The only thing with these weights is that you shouldn't overdo it, meaning you shouldn't abuse them, because if you chase after one thing, you might lose sight of another. Next, the following type of strength is explosive strength. Usually the static exercises are very good for developing this. Exercises like push-ups with a jump or push-ups with a clap, for example. That is anything that you can throw out sharply and powerfully. This includes kettlebells and medicine balls. That's exactly it. When you push, you push. And there's another aspect, a strength aspect. This is when you work from the perspective of the strength of movement technique. In other words, or as they say, the mechanics of movement. So for these things in boxing, there are resistance bands, because the property of the band is that it pulls both ways, out and back. In other words, you can't really replace resistance bands, just like you can't replace kettlebells, barbells, or gymnastics with anything else. That's why, in combination, all these different types of strength are necessary for developing fighting skills overall. Because in a fight, you experience different types of loads, and you need to be prepared for all kinds of tension, explosive overall, and well, elastic, flexible things. So all of this is necessary. That's why there are so many shells in boxing. And honestly, when I hear people say things like, this isn't suitable for a boxer, or a boxer shouldn't do this, it really grates on me. You'll get too stiff here, you'll lose speed there, right? Of course, if you don't know what you're doing, you can really mess things up. That's why you need a coach, someone who determines with what you should be working on. Some people need to work with a barbell, some with kettlebells, some with resistance bands, and some just need to shadow box. Once again, I'm saying it's all very specific, and what works is different for everyone. So to just categorically forbid something like that is wrong. That's just complete nonsense. Maybe that's exactly where the strength and the secret lie. Boxing is a very diverse sport. All of this was developed, believe it or not, over the course of 70 years. And during Soviet times, it was all invented by the Mayon International Institute of Sport. In other words, there was no room for improvisation there. That's why all the programs, all the manuals written by our coaching forefathers, those are lives lived, the experience of an entire generation. That's why it can't be ignored. And it also shouldn't be distorted or broken, because it gets to the point where, for example, they say you can't jump. Well, you can't walk in a goose step, you'll ruin your knees. Well, of course, if you walk in a goose step from morning till night, you'll definitely ruin your knees. That's exactly why there is a methodology. And that's why, guys, be attentive and don't listen to nonsense. Boxing is a sport, a very serious and scientific kind of sport. But what makes resistance bands good, or rather effective is that they help a boxer in terms of both technique and strength training. In other words, technique and strength, this is also one of the key characteristics. It's a very good preparatory exercise for the hook punch. That is the hook punch. Well, how can I explain it in the simplest way? So, it's the rotational part of the punch and the gross part, which depends on the muscles. Because sometimes you don't have that whole rotational base for the punch. In other words, you're basically punching with just one arm, especially at close range, when you don't really have the option to wind up. That's why this exercise is done like this. That is, the first part that you need is this one, which is in the hand, in the fist. The second part is the one that goes to the arm, this part here. And the third part is when you start turning with your shoulder. That is, the body stays fixed. It doesn't move or sway anywhere. It stands like a pillar. And gradually. So you start and bring in this very important moment when the hand goes here. And gradually, just as you release it, you guide it along. If it seems easy, you can step back and slowly, without rushing, work through it. The next part of this exercise is when you start to engage your body. In the same way, you can bring it up to the head, let's say, the upper level, and to the lower level. Everything is calm. The next step, without using your hand, is rotating your torso for the punch. Because the resistance band is pulling, you have to exert an effort that you would never reach in everyday life. The thing is, in boxing, it's considered both there and back. In other words, you strike with a punch. Speed is measured both when you go forward and when you return. The next preparatory exercise for the straight punch. And the first of these is tilting your body together with your arm. When you extend not just your arm, of course, that's also a useful exercise. But it quickly gets boring, because your body gets used to it. But when you start involving your body in the movement, that's when the stabilizing factor comes in, so that you aren't thrown off balance, either up or down. You need to keep your body precisely aligned along the line of tension in your arm, so that the line is straight. That's why I say that here, the special strength comes specifically from the stabilizers, from what keeps you stable. Because very often boys miss the target and they don't understand why. They miss because, for example, their shoulder is working more, or their chest is working more. And these kinds of muscular imbalances, he might start off well, but in the end, his arm slips off. A preparatory exercise for the uppercut. Here as well. If you start from a bent position, you have to work not with your arm by pulling it like this, but with your back, with this straightening movement. So in the original movement, the whole balance involves the leg, basically the back, the straightening, and the arm. So this is how it works, like this. From this same position, you can throw a straight punch or an uppercut from below. Here too, there are a lot of stabilizing elements involved. This is one of the variations. Very often, as I'll show, boxers work like this, pulling through the back, which is exactly how it should be done. You can pass it from below or from above. This is also one of the good exercises, but there is a wonderful exercise that is done in the opposite direction. When you pull in, hitting like this, hitting towards yourself, as you get pulled back, is boidi. This is speed work. And working with resistance bands is generally very good for speed, especially when you use two of them. Exercises like, I don't know, like a barge hauler or something. That's also very effective, specifically for the back and lower back. It's exactly for that guiding motion of the strike with a natural fall to the side. You can also lay it out in a straight line, like this. But in boxing, it's best to always try to shift a little from one foot to the other. That is to transfer your body weight. This exercise really helps you feel that. The next exercise also uses reverse resistance when you spread your arms to the sides. You can also raise your arms upward. All these exercises can be done with reverse tension. You can also bring your arms up from below, and you can also bring them down from above. These exercises actually work really well as part of a warm-up too. And here is another effect, explosive power, meaning the impulse should travel from your foot all the way to your shoulder. That is when you start to explode with it. Of course, you do this on both sides as well. This is also an excellent system for strengthening all the stabilizing muscles, like the shoulder blade. It's a fantastic exercise. The next one is done with support. It's better to brace yourself against something and move your arms out to the sides like this, spreading them apart. Now, behind your back. Behind your back. The next exercise. And with straight arms. Guys, develop yourselves with the excellent equipment, the spring. We will definitely make another video about resistance bands, covering all muscle groups. We'll show you the correct techniques and some old, long forgotten manuals. Wishing everyone success, good luck and love.